The deceitful way Satan employs the three lies, and the way human beings are led to adopt them, can be observed right from the beginning of the devil's engagement with the human race in the case of his attack on Adam and Eve. Lie number 1, I don't need God, falsely assuming independence from God, dimming the truth. The devil said, "You will not die," and Eve listened to and believed the devil instead of God. Similarly, Adam listened to and believed Eve instead of God. Eve should have trusted that what God had said was true, but she didn't need to consult him before making this fateful decision, acting indeed as if she had no need of God, but was instead completely in the right to do such things as an independent agent, with no necessity to consider anyone else such as her husband, and such as God. Adam, on the other hand, confronted with the potential loss of Eve, likewise failed to consult God, listening exclusively to Eve and to his own heart, as if he were an independent agent with the right to make this decision with no further ado and fully capable of understanding the consequences without God's help. Believing this first lie instead of the truth is the beginning of the trouble. Lie number 2, I am like God, falsely assuming equality with God, separating from the truth. The devil said, "You will become like God, that is God's," and Eve took and ate the fruit to derive this benefit for herself and her husband. Adam ate so as not to lose Eve, imagining that in God's place he could in this way help Eve, even though he was not God, and failed to trust in God's ability to help him. For Eve to give Adam the fruit and pressure him to accept the sentence of death was to act in God's place, as if she were equal to him. For Adam to acquiesce and accept the fruit, as if he were capable of rescuing the situation himself without God, was likewise putting himself on a level with God. Blasphemously asserting your own truth as equal to, and even superior to God's truth is always the second step. Lie number 3, God needs me, falsely assuming superiority to God, perverting the truth. Aware of their predicament, Adam and Eve determined to help God by restoring Eden through making clothes out of leaves to cover their nakedness, and fig leaves thus became the symbol for acts of human good ostensibly done to cover up evil ever since. But the real evil is the horrific lie underlying this action, the false notion that God needed their help to solve this problem. Blasphemously placing yourself over God, demanding that he accept your truth in place of his own, and deigning to help him as if that were possible or as if he needed help, is the final state of insanity brought on by pursuing the same path the devil walked. This is an evil thing in everything which is being done under the sun, namely that there is one outcome for everyone, and moreover that the hearts of the sons of man are full of evil, and there is madness in their hearts during their lives, and afterwards they go to join the dead. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 3. Satan is very quick to exploit this common madness inherited by the human race since the fall, an insanity which is the function of our sin natures. The sin which resides within our flesh as a result of our position in Adam naturally lusts for the promise, beyond each of the three lies, to be able to have and do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, regardless of the desires or rights of others, without any need for God being his equal, and justifying whatever is done as essentially good, because it is desirable, and therefore ultimately helpful to him. For example, Romans 3:7 and 8. The sin nature within us is the devil's natural ally, and he is always keen to exploit it. By pressuring us and by tempting us, the devil is very good at delivering a powerful 1-2 punch, frightening us in regard to anything which threatens our security on the one hand, and coaxing us toward things which are sinful and evil, but appeal to our lust and desire on the other. With lie number 1, the devil plays upon our need and inherent greed, using the fears and pressures of this life as prods to get us desiring things which go far beyond the true necessities of this life. Once we stop looking to God as our help and begin to see this short, miserable life as the be-all and end-all of our existence. And I saw that all labor and achievement spring from man's envy of his neighbor. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 4. All man's efforts are for his mouth, yet his appetite is never satisfied. Ecclesiastes chapter 6 verse 7. Therefore, since these children, that is, of verse 13, have a common heritage of flesh and blood, Christ too partook of these same common elements in a very similar fashion, that is, not identical only in that he was virgin-born, and so without sin, in order that through his death he might put an end to the one possessing the power of death, that is, the devil, and might reconcile those who were subject to being slaves their whole lives long by their fear of death. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 14 and 15. With lie number 2, the devil seeks to turn our self-awareness into an arrogant self-esteem which borders on self-worship. It is objectively arrogant to think that we can provide for ourselves without God's help, and even more so to think that we deserve so much more than others do, but it is subjectively arrogant to imagine not only that we do not need God, but that we are worthy objects of worship in our own right. Instead of merely wanting nothing to do with God, those who buy into this second lie lose all fear of God. Romans chapter 3, verse 18, which is the foundation of all true wisdom. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7. Yet because the wicked do not fear God, it will not go well with them, and their days will not lengthen like a shadow. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 13. Leave this way, get off this path, and stop confronting us with the Holy One of Israel. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 11. With lie number 3, the devil seeks to overturn our natural desire for God, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11, and transform it into idolatry of one form or another, prompting us to do things to help God. Whatever the ostensible object of the new religion or cult or humanistic endeavor, in reality, Satan is at the core of it, with the individual who has replaced God in his or her own heart, imagining he or she is helping God while actually worshipping the devil. This desire to justify one's greed and one's replacement of the truth with an alternative truth, this desire for pseudo-good, brings the system of lies to its inevitable, self-righteous conclusion. Having turned one's back on God, having turned towards oneself instead as equal in one's thinking to God, and having gone on from there to embrace some system of helping God, which in effect replaces him and his truth with one's own, actually, of course, the devil's, no further restraint of evil exists in the heart of the person concerned, so that all things are now possible in the service of the evil one. From their callous hearts comes iniquity. Their evil imaginations have no limits. They scoff and speak with malice. With arrogance they threaten oppression. Their mouths lay claim to heaven, and their tongues take possession of the earth. Psalm chapter 73, verse 7 through 9. God's wrath is about to be revealed from heaven upon all ungodliness and unrighteousness, on men who suppress the truth in their hearts about God in their unrighteousness. For that which can be known about God from everyday experience is obvious to them, because God has made it obvious. His nature, though invisible, is nevertheless plainly apparent, and has been since his foundation of the world, for it may be clearly inferred from this creation of his. This is true of both his eternal power and his divinity, so that they are without any excuse. They knew about God, but they neither honored him as God nor thanked him. Instead, they gave themselves over to the vanity of this world in their speculations, and their senseless hearts were filled with darkness. Claiming to be wise, they became foolish, for they exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for images and likenesses of corruptible men, of birds and beasts and reptiles. For this very reason, God abandoned them to corruption in the lusts of their own hearts, that they might mutually defile their bodies, that is, the very thing they lusted to do. And so they exchanged the truth of God for the lie of the devil, and worshipped and served the creature Satan in place of the Creator, who is worthy to be blessed forever. Amen. Yes, for this very reason God abandoned them to defiling passions. For their females exchanged natural relations for unnatural ones, and likewise also the males abandoned natural relations with the female, and burned with desire one for another, males for males, acting out their shamefulness in full, and in their own flesh fully receiving the reward due for their error. And just as they did not see fit to keep God in their hearts, God abandoned them to their unfit minds, to do things which are not fitting, filled up with every sort of unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, guile, maliciousness, gossips, slanderers, God-forsaken and forsaking, insolent, arrogant, boasters, devisers of evils, not concerned for their parents, unthinking, unreconcilable, uncaring, unmerciful. Men who, though they had full knowledge of God's righteous decree, namely that those who do such things are worthy of death, not only did such things themselves, but even commended those who made it their practice to do them. Romans chapter 1 verse 18 through 32.